Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Thank you for joining us today. The webinar will start soon in around 5 minutes. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this CapPlus webinar today. This is our second webinar for this year, and we're still very happy to have with us Sandy Vachi. For all of you who were here in our previous webinar about sales. So today we're going to have another webinar that is from big profits from big data, way to embrace the digital readiness, and Sandy is going to lead this webinar again for us. Just wanted to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us again. And we also have some upcoming webinars for May and June. They're going to be, so it's like two parts webinar on human centered design for financial institution. So please join us if you're interested. Sorry, and if you have any technical difficulties today, please contact Lynn Railsback. Here is her email, and she can try to solve any technical issues that you guys might have for joining us today. Without taking more time from Sandy, I'll leave it up to Sandy to start the topic of the day. Sandy, please.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction. So today we got the big topic, big data. And what I'm planning to do is first, let's take a look at what this big data thing is all about. And then let's talk about the real important stuff, which is, okay, so how are we going to make money on this, and what do we need to make sure that our company is ready to move in this direction? So the first one is some background and latest news to reassure ourselves that, yes, we are really kind of at the cutting edge of trends. And then let's get down to business. How do we make money with all of this? Okay? So a few big blocks. And at the end, as usual, those of you who joined us for the last session, the sales setup and sales management discussion, may remember that I gave you some tools, some templates, some stuff to fill out to actually practice things and decide where you are. So I'm going to do the same thing here. And I'll leave you with a self-evaluation template that you can use to tell where your company is on its road to digital transformation and what you might need to do. So obviously, as a special offer from CapPlus, we are telling you that if you fill out the questionnaire and you send it back, we will give you a free evaluation and suggested next steps. That's our little special gift to you. And without further ado, let's get going. So we start with big data because we are talking about big profit from big data. So we started with big data. So what the heck is big data, and why everybody is talking about big data? I mean, information has been around for a long time. Now, a number of things happened over the past, say, 5+ years. Number one, a lot of things went digital. You know, in banking, people used to go in and have bank accounts and statements and checks, etc. Now, most of that is digitized in most of the world. So whatever you do, you're leaving a digital footprint. And don't kid yourself. You're walking down the street, you're going into shop somewhere. You want to buy a new pair of shoes. Companies will know where you are, what you're doing, because the GPS feedback from your mobile phone, which is turned on in your pocket, is going to track you. So whoever is listening will know that you're walking into a shoe store. They will know that you bought a pair of shoes, because when you pay with a credit card, that also goes into the database. And companies will then correlate these two things. So there is this digital smog, digital footprint that's out there. That's the first thing. So more and more we are leaving a trail behind. The second thing is storage ability went up tremendously. We never used to be able to keep all this information. Now we can. And that is because computing became very cheap. That's the third point. So we can store information, we can analyze information. So as a result, you know, we got this big data thing where we capture everything, actually, whether we want to use it or not, because before we didn't want to do it because it cost us money. Today, it costs us almost nothing. So we just say, okay, good, get all the information. And then we try to correlate everything with everything. That gives us information. The problem is it doesn't really give us too much insight. So on a surface, we can use it, but keep in mind, correlation is not causality. So just because something correlates with something, it doesn't mean that one thing actually causes another thing to happen. So at the first step, you can ignore that, because who cares if I'm making more money? Fine. But if I want to take it further and build a strategy around it, I actually need to understand why things are happening, not just what is happening. So what we need to do is we need to build an understanding, a map to take us from this correlation and lots of information to actually a deep insight understanding. That's what we're going to talk about today, and how to do it in a profitable way. And let me tell you what we are not going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about all the different tools out there. On this slide, you see a whole lot of stuff available, tools that you can use to do analytics. These are just tools. You pick the one that you need. That is not the important thing. The important thing is to get the most out of information that you have. And how you do that, you use the tools. Fine. But it's the organizational approach. It's how we actually want to get the most out of it, which really matters. The Economist, a year and a half ago, had a big, front page that said the world's most valuable resource. Information is replacing oil and energy and resources as the most valuable stuff in the world. And the companies that know how to use that, like the Googles of the world and the Amazons of the world, are the ones who are going to prosper in the future. So the question is, how do we make sure that we are one of them? Well, the first thing is, okay, if we talk about big data, we are fashionable. I asked myself the question, are people really interested in big data? So let's do a Google search, and more than 6.5 billion mentions come up for big data. Artificial intelligence and digital transformation follow with about 500 million mentions. And the interesting thing is that the stuff that really makes us money today, like customer relationship management, predictive modeling, segmentation analytics, are really, really trailing. So everybody's paying attention to these great new things. So if you talk about big data, yes, we are being fashionable. Now, being fashionable and being profitable are two different things. So as a first step, I would like to offer to you an observation. Before we get into big data or any such thing, let's see what we can do with what we've got. And when I go around and talk to companies, one of the things I notice is that a lot of companies and a lot of banks and so on, they do segmentation almost as an afterthought. Once they got customers, they try to segment them, but they don't actually segment the market and the customers and look at the correlation and try to decide what to do with this. So I always tell everybody, number one, do proactive segmentation. Segmentation should not be something that I do with customers that I already got only. Segmentation is something that I should do as my way of being. So what I do is I segment my customers. I segment the market. I look at who my most profitable customers are. And then when I got the profile for my most profitable customers, I look at my whole customer base and I say, okay, if I have, 100,000 customers, 10,000 of them, the most profitable, have this profile. And I have another 20,000 who have exactly the same profile, but they are not as profitable. I can make the assumption, a hypothesis, as we call it, that these people could be just as profitable as the top 10%. So what I will do is I will try to find out what is missing to turn them into just as profitable as the top 10%. And it is usually some other product holdings, some cross-selling stuff. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to pick those 20% of customers who have the same profile as my top 10% most profitable. I'm going to see what is missing in terms of their product holdings. I'm going to make the assumption that they need the same offers, and I'm going to give it to them. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a cross-sell program on a selected basis. Then what I'm going to do is the next step. I'm going to use this profile of my most profitable customers and apply it to the market and see how many people out there are who match this profile. And what do I need to do to get them? How can I target these prospects? And once I do that, and I have some experience, then what I do is I compare what I did, how much it cost, and what the results were. So on one hand, I was cross-selling to people in my customer base who had my most profitable profile, but were not most profitable. What did it cost me to turn them into most profitable? What is the payback on my investment? On the other hand, I was targeting in the world out there people who could be my most profitable customers. What did it cost me to get them, to bring them in and turn them into those most profitable customers? So then I look at the payback, the return on investment on the two activities. And you know what? You actually have yourself a strategy. This will tell your company, should I be going out there, acquire new customers with a certain profile, or should I be focusing on mining my own customer base, or should I balance between these two? So this is a really, really simple thing. And really, honestly, guys, you don't need big data. You don't need any sophisticated stuff for this. You just need good old segmentation analysis and some predictive modeling thrown in there. Everybody can do that. So my first advice is, let's start making money before we start getting really sophisticated. Now, if you want to get very sophisticated, and we are talking about big data and digital transformation, the question is, how do we get there? And it's usually very easy to say how we get there, but it's more difficult to address the issues that stand in our way. Many times we ignore the issues. Well, a lot of people say that, oh, you know, we need the right IT tools, we need the right people, there are not enough people with the right talent, etc. We need the executives to approve it. Wrong. Number one issue is company culture. And I'm showing on this slide research results from two companies. One is Capgemini, the first one, and the other one is McKinsey. Now, McKinsey did their research among executives. Capgemini did their research among everybody. The common thing in both researches is that what people told us is that the biggest issue is the company culture, the ingrained behavior. Do people actually accept, believe in, and want to do digitally driven profit boost, digital transformation? It's interesting also to see that obviously in the Capgemini research among everybody versus McKinsey, but twice as many people said that culture is a big problem, because Capgemini is executives. So executives tend to say, oh yeah, we don't have a problem with anything. So you can see that generally speaking, the McKinsey results are much lower in terms of the barriers than the Capgemini. So normal people would say, 2/3 of them would say, we have an issue with culture. So-called abnormal people, the executives, would say, oh, only about 1/3 of them that, oh, we have a problem with culture. But the fact remains that in both groups, people are saying culture is the biggest thing. So how do we then change the culture? How do we start making money? How do we get people used to the idea that this is the right thing to do? Now, the way we get them to do that, to change their mind, is number one, don't overcomplicate things. Do the simple things first. It's kind of what I told you about doing the proactive segmentation. Everybody can understand that, and it starts delivering results immediately. So people get used to the idea that using information is good for us because it makes us more money. Number two, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Just look at what companies are doing. There are a lot of companies out there that are way ahead of the pack, and they are doing interesting things. Learn from them. Don't learn from them what tools they are using. It doesn't matter. You can buy the right tool. Learn from them the mindset, the attitude, the approach that they are using. So what we're going to do next is actually we're going to look at some of this stuff. How to do the simple things first, and what we can learn from the best. Then the next one is, let's get excited, but let's remain sane. Let's be skeptical. Let's understand what we can and cannot use big data for. And then the final one is, okay, we are saying we are ready to go. So let us do some self-diagnostics. What do we need to do to eliminate the roadblocks? Whatever exists within our organization that stands between us, huge big profit from digital transformation. So these are the next few steps I'm going to walk you through. Starting with doing the simple things first. Number one, everybody, please create an inventory of data types of what you got. You if you have a full view of your customers and prospects. Prospects is important. A lot of companies have information about their customers, but when somebody comes in, asks a question, and walks away, most companies don't capture that information. So my suggestion to you is create a process, a database where you can capture information about people who talk to you, potential prospects. Don't lose it. Use it in the future, okay? Keep it there. So customer information, prospect information, inventory, what do we have? Then think about what you want to have. Look at what you have, what you want to have, and say, okay, these are the missing pieces of information. So now I know what I need to fill in. Now, what I need to fill in, sometimes it's very trivial and I'm not interested in. Sometimes it's very important. So let's select the most important gaps, the most important pieces of missing information. So now I know what I have about my customers, what I have about my prospects, what are the things I need to have. Now I also need to look at how I bring all that information in. And I would challenge any company to give me a full map of data capture, transfer, and data use processes. Most companies don't have that. You need to know how the information is brought in, transferred, and how it goes through the system. How many times it gets altered, can be changed, issues can be introduced. And then I say, okay, good. So now I know how I get the information, what information I have, and I know the gaps I have. So can I fill those gaps in? If I can fill them in, how do I do that? If not, where do I get the information to fill in the gaps? And then I look at the other side. You know, we already have a lot of information, and maybe some of that is very useful. They could be useful to different parts of the organization. They could be useful to others. I can have, alliance deals and share information so I can start monetizing my own data and bring in the missing pieces of data in return. Now, once I've got all of that, I have a good lay of the land, and then I start building my predictive models. Okay, so with all this information and the behavior of my customers, what would I predict could happen? And which of those things would actually build profit? And then I focus in on those things that would build profit. And then I say, okay, so do I need to change the product? Do I need to change the processes? Do I need to change the service system? What do I need to do? I define all those changes and go about making them. And then, very important, don't forget, you need to operationalize those changes, because it's one thing to make the changes, but it's another thing to make it easy for everybody to follow. If you introduce a new system that's difficult to follow, you're not going to get anywhere. So you need to make it dead easy for people to use. Once you've done that, you test it and you go to the next step. So that's really the first thing. 10 steps to do what we can do today without actually getting into very sophisticated stuff. Now, let me give you some examples on how this works. Citibank, New York. When I was working at Citibank, I had a boss. She was from New York. She told me, Sandy, before you lose a customer, you already lost him. And I thought this was absolute nonsense. Before you lose a customer, you already lost him. But of course, she was my big boss, so I didn't want to tell her that I think that you're really stupid. So I put it in a nice way. I said, that's a very interesting observation. Could you please elaborate? And then she explained, and then I understood. It wasn't that stupid. She said, you see, Sandy, when somebody leaves Citibank, we capture when the person cuts the relationship. But that is at the end of the process. And the way it works is that that person first pays back his loan, so he is no longer beholden to Citibank. Then he redirects all his payments from his current account. So another bank will handle all the transactional activities. Then he will start not using his credit card. Then he will look at his investments and will shift them around. But before all of that happens, what may happen is actually that, say, this customer's wife will do the same thing. Because, you know, we didn't treat the wife that well, and she got pissed off, and she canceled her checking account, then she cancels her credit card, then, you know, she cancels her line of credit. Then the husband says, okay, well, if you already canceled and you have experience with another bank, I'm going to start doing the same thing. So you see, there is a long process there. And when we start acting, when people say, I'm leaving, that's way too late. The decision is made. So what we need to do is put a system in place that will track the usage intensity, usage activity of everybody who is related to you. And when the usage intensity drops for family members, we start paying attention, because if your activity also starts to drop, I know you will leave. So Citibank in New York built a whole program for retention using this information. They started tracking related party usage intensity, and they put in flags, and they started intervening. So you are actually saved before you made up your mind to leave. That is intelligent use of information, okay? But they needed to build a system for that. Now here's another example how you can use data intelligently. At the Royal Bank of Canada, I was working there. We built a very efficient sourcing mechanism for people taking out home loans. We used agents who went out there and worked with real estate agents, and we were actually granting home loans removed, sitting at the kitchen table on a laptop. About 1/3 of our new home loans came in this way. We were very happy because we didn't need any branches to accommodate the traffic. All the people who were doing this were fully commissioned, and they were not on our books as employees. So we thought we had a very, very efficient system until we looked at retention ratio among our home loan customers. And we found that people who came in through this channel and never went into one of our branches had a 25% higher attrition rate than those who actually walked into the branches. So we thought we built a very efficient sourcing mechanism, but we didn't look at the back end. We were efficiently sourcing people, and we were very efficiently losing them. So we needed to go back and change the process. So what we did is actually we changed the customer onboarding process and introduced a step for them to walk into the branch. And that immediately dropped their attrition rate by 25%. We never would have got that without doing the predictive analysis and doing the follow-up on that. So that was an interesting one. Now at Credit Bank of Moscow, we when I was there, we had a lot of customers, small businesses, retailers, and they had a big problem. Russia is not the safest places in the world, and a lot of them got robbed. So they actually wanted to send in their cash intake at the end of the day, every day, to the bank. We thought, great, we can give them a service. We set up a cash pickup service. It was actually a service for fee, so they were paying us for it. So we went out and collected all the cash at the end of the day from all our small retailers. So far, so good. Profitable business. But then the realization came, okay, we had a lot of issues with the small retailers. Most of them had banking relationships with 2 or 3 banks. And the problem was when they ran into difficulty, they may be able to pay back their loan to the first bank or to the second bank, but the third bank who is left there ended up with a bad loan. They didn't pay that guy. So we thought, we need to understand when somebody starts going into trouble. Okay, we are collecting their cash. So that's very easy. So let's take the cash pickup information and feed it back into our credit risk management system. And if somebody misses a cash pickup 2 weeks in a row, we know we have a problem with this guy generating enough sales. So we start paying attention, we start helping the guy, and if we cannot help him, we call the loan. So we are the first bank who actually gets paid, and the third bank, who is not as smart as we are, doesn't use the information, gets up holding or ends up holding the bag. The result of this was that we had a loan loss ratio on these people of less than 1%. The industry average was over 15%. A very simple, smart use of information gave us an incredible advantage. And now let me give you a couple of examples of what to watch out for. There was a bank in Singapore. They had a big program. The Singapore government wanted to help small farmers. So they had a special loan program, and they said, we pay half the interest rate on any loan that you give to small farmers. Great. So the bank put in a big program, and they got lots of small farmers. They built an incredible database. Then they looked at the usage pattern and the type of people and everything, and they started creating new products and new programs and created a huge big marketing campaign for cross-selling to all these small farmers that they got in. Spent lots of money, lots of energy, and waited for the results. And waited for the results. And still waited for the results. And there were no results. That's when they started to go back and check the data in the database. And they realized that what happened is their salespeople, because they could give a loan at half rate, went to all the people that they knew and they said, okay, so I have a half rate loan for you to get your new car. Tell me, where do you live? Oh, I live on Orchard Road. For those of you who don't know Singapore, Orchard Road is the main road running right through downtown. It is full of these high-rise 50, 100-story buildings. Ah, Orchard Road. What floor do you live on? Oh, I live on the 30th floor. Ah, do you have a balcony? Yes. Do you have plants on your balcony? Yes. Good. So you are a small farmer growing plants. So I qualify you for this half-rate loan. Next guy. Where do you live? I also live on Orchard Road. Oh, what floor? I live on the 70th floor. Oh, do you have a balcony? No. Do you have any plants? I don't have any plants because my cats would chew up my plants. Oh, you have cats? Yes. Oh, you're a small animal farmer. I give you a half-price loan. So basically what happened is this bank built a database of people who were not farmers but qualified on paper for the small farmers loan, and then they wanted to use that information to give them farming type related offers. Of course, it didn't work. This is what's called garbage in, garbage out. So do not forget the human element in all of this, because whatever you do is only as good as the information that you get in. So you need to know what information you get in. Now, just the last couple of things very quickly. In Boston, they had a setup where they wanted to check for potholes on the road, and they decided they have an application called Street Bump, and everybody with a smartphone can use it. And you know, when you drive around and you hit a pothole, the car will jump up and down, whoop, and the information would be captured by this application and would be sent in centrally, and it would be analyzed, and a big data neural network analysis done, where we need to go, where we need to fix the potholes. And it was all great until somebody came around and pointed out that, guys, isn't it funny that all the potholes are on the roads leaving from wealthy suburbs to wealthy work areas? Because the people who have the smartphones, who are driving a car, who have the smartphones on while you're driving, are the people who are working in highly paid professions, and they're commuting between high-end suburbs to high-end work areas. And those people who are not, they are taking a public transit, they do not have smartphones, therefore information doesn't come from them about potholes. So we are missing 80% of the real potholes in the city. Now, again, to Chicago's credit, this happened in Chicago Public Works Department. They immediately published these results and said, guys, watch out with big data and the information that you get from big data. Okay, so I'm gonna skip one more, which talks about the 5i and getting beyond the first level correlation. If anybody is interested, send me an email and I will send you an explanation back, because I wanted to get to the next point, hoping that you have now got the previous 3-4 points and we can carry on. Now, to go back and recap, what we talked about is, number one, information and data is very useful. How we extract business information out of all the data is crucial. It's not the tools that we have, it's the mindset that we have towards using that information. The way to get a company into making money on all of this is to start small, baby steps. There is a lot of information we already have. We just need to make sure we know what we got, how we've got it, map it all out, figure out what we are missing, build models on it, and start using it. And then we can demonstrate to the company, to the executives, that it actually makes sense. So we can start changing that mindset that Capgemini and McKinsey said are the key issues towards making use of data. Then the next one is, okay, let's take a look at some examples of how people can do that. So I told you about how to do it, how not to do it, the Credit Bank of Moscow, the Royal Bank of Canada, Citibank, how we use the information in a smart way, and the kind of things to watch out for, like the Singapore experience, where we forgot about the human element. So now we got all of this. How can we tell if we are actually there? And what do we need to do? So what I wanted to give you is a very simple self-assessment tool, and you can use that. And my suggestion to you and our offer to you from CapPlus is as follows. You take this information, you take this slide, you look at the 4 areas: strategy, organization, infrastructure, process. There are very simple 3 questions for each. And what you need to do is put in to what extent you agree that this is actually already in place in your company. Once you've done that, you send it back to me, to my email address at CapPlus, and I will send you back an assessment of where you are and what you need to do. Let me show you how it works. So I've done this with a number of companies, and here is a packaged goods company. I can actually tell you it's a beer company, global beer company. And when we looked at where they were, under OK, you have three colors. Red means no, we are not OK. Yellow means so-so. Green means yes, we are there. Now the catch is this. Green, yellow, red is always versus a percentage of minimum requirement. And the percentages, the minimum requirement for these areas are all different. And this is what I'm not going to tell you so that you cannot manipulate the results. I have the percentages. We developed those percentages based on lots of experience, lots of cases. But different things matter to a different degree. So different percentages and where you are versus those percentages give you, are you okay or not? So when you look at a company like this, where in the strategy, they have a big red, in the organization, there is a big red, but the rest of it is green and yellow, then we can actually analyze it. And we can say, okay, there is good ground level support here, but in fact, the business context is missing. And you are not really, you don't really have the organizational setup to take advantage of this data-driven approach. You need to take different routes, okay? So you need to integrate the different businesses. You need to get more information about the customers because you do not have direct contact with the customers. So you cannot use information because you do not have the information. So step one is generate that information. So very specific next steps come out of the evaluation. The same way with the telecommunications company. Again, it's, you know, there are some reds, there are more reds here. But basically what happens is when you look at the results, you say, okay, good, you want to go ahead, but management is not sure. Staff is also not convinced. So basically, before we can get going on a program like that, we need to have a change program, okay? So step one is make sure that everyone understands why it's good, and then we can get into actually doing that. And the third illustration is it's a business-to-business company, and you can see there are a lot of reds here. But it's interesting because the reds, even though in the infrastructure, they are really not there. You know what? We can build the infrastructure. So as long as you got strong support, the cultural commitment is there. The lack of infrastructure is not a problem. We can build the infrastructure. But we need to be careful that people will not expect the sky from what we are doing. So we are ready to go. We need to be careful about overpromise, and we can build the infrastructure, go to it. So you see, what happened is, when you look at the number of greens, okay, and the number of reds, not okay, the beer company had the most greens, the business-to-business company had the least amount of greens and the most of the reds. Yet, what happens is, these guys, the business-to-business company, are ready to go ahead. The telco is only ready to go ahead after a change program, and the beer company is not ready to go ahead. They should not go ahead. They should do different things to build a database of customer and information. So there is a very clear direction coming out of that. Now, if you'd like to have the same kind of support, direction, suggestions on what to do, That's when you need to go ahead, take this template, do it for yourself, send it into the email address that's in the presentation, and then gratis, we will send you back our analysis. Let me recap what we talked about. We talked about big data, the background. It's fashionable, but can we make money with it? How we make money with it? We look at the basic things first, the stuff most of us have. Identify the gaps, how we fill in the gaps, and start doing the basic activities using information in a very smart way. Then we take it one step further. We don't try to reinvent the wheel. We look around the world and see what are some of the best companies did. Can we pick up their ideas? So we learn from them. Then we also make sure that we understand the limitations of all of this data-focused approach, and we don't walk into the same traps that some of these companies have walked into. So we learn both the good and the bad, okay? And then to decide, are we ready? And what we need to do to be truly ready, we use a very simple self-assessment diagnostics. We just write in there to what extent we are there in any of the 12 questions. We send it into CapPlus, and we wait for these guys to help us free of charge. And then we know what to do. Anyway, this was all, guys. I wanted to make sure that we have a good 15 minutes at the end. I don't know how many questions you have. I do realize that I kind of dumped a lot of information on you. And I know it might take some time to digest, but all of the slides are available to you. You can read them. If you have questions now, please ask. If you're still sorting it out in your mind, please send an email. Don't be shy. Don't be afraid. Oh my God, I didn't ask the question now. I'm out of time. No, you're not out of time. You can send a follow-up email at any time, and we will get back to you and we will help you. And if you want our help with the self-diagnostics and some suggestions on the crucial next steps you can take towards turning data into profit, send back the template and we will help. I will shut up now. If any questions, please go ahead now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you for a great presentation as usual. Yes, so please feel free to send us your question, type them into the box, and I'll take them and share with Sandy. So far, Sandy, we have a question regarding the example that you used on the FMCG. They were asking if you do have an example from the financial service industry.
Okay, well,
or just an example of what happened in a financial service industry scenario.
You see, I didn't use financial services evaluations and templates because in the examples I gave about learning from others, I already used a number of FMCG examples, and I didn't want to overburden you with, with banking examples. So I didn't want to overburden you with financial services stuff, because I gave you how things worked at Citibank in New York, how things worked at the Credit Bank of Moscow in Russia, how things worked at this bank in Singapore, because that was a bank as well. So I didn't want to get into it. I do have some templated information in my files. So what I would suggest is, if anybody would like to get a specific diagnostics example from the financial services industry, please just give your name to CapPlus or send me an email, and I will send it to you. I don't have it right up on the screen as part of the presentation, but it takes me maybe 2 minutes to pull it out of my my files, and I will send it over. Okay?
Great. Thank you, Sandy. Another question that just came in. Sorry. Do you have any examples of how the big data can work in the microfinance sector versus the big banking sector?
First of all, the way big data works in the different sectors is exactly the same. So it's not that big data works differently in microfinance versus big banks. The dynamics of using big data are exactly the same. The specific parameters that go into the big data holding tank database are different. So whether I'm dealing with high net worth individuals, or corporate customers or microfinance customers, I approach things exactly the same. The differences come in the key difference. The first one is in the availability of data, what kind of data I can use. You see, for big data, I talked about this digital footprint, okay? Whatever we do, we leave a digital footprint. Now, microfinance customers leave a digital footprint, on one hand, much richer than, for example, corporate customers. On the other hand, I also have a problem with information that is much more difficult to get than in corporate customers. Let me give you an example of these two extremes, okay? Where I get more information, richer information, and where I don't get the same information. First of all, for microfinance customers, their mobile use, the mobile use that I can actually see is at a much higher level than for corporate customers. I do not have access to the information about data flows between corporate customers or between corporate clients and their customers because they guard that information. Microfinance customers do not and cannot guard that information. So, for example, their mobile phone use is public. A lot of the financial transactions that they do is very obvious. They are not sophisticated enough to hide their transactions. When they transfer money from A to B. They do not go through offshore accounting centers like a big corporate client. So on one hand, I have much more transparent information from microfinance customers. That helps me in doing my analysis. On the other hand, now let me talk about the issues that I may have and how to address those issues. The basic issue I have with microfinance customers is that a lot of reliable financial data that I can get from companies is missing. Small guys do not keep books. They do not have, annual records. They do not file tax payments. They do not do a lot of that stuff, okay? So what you need to do then is you look for information that could be a good substitute for the information that you really want. This is called using proxy information. A proxy information is a substitute information. It is something that will correlate with the kind of information that you really want. So let me give you an example of how using proxy information works when I'm dealing with very small customers, okay? When I was at Citibank and we wanted to set up a business unit targeting startup entrepreneurs, kind of microfinance, micro customers in Poland, we very quickly realized that the kind of information we need to judge their credit worthiness is missing. Because guess what? Every one of them was at a break even because they fudged their books so they would not have to pay taxes. Okay, so everybody always was at a zero profit level, not negative, not positive, at a zero. Nobody filed any reliable returns. Information about business dynamics was non-existent. So a lot of the basic information we would normally use to build a template to evaluate their creditworthiness was missing. So what we did instead is we looked for proxies and we said, okay, there are certain professions that are likely to be okay. So if you're a dentist, you are more okay than if you're a hairdresser, because a good dentist will stay in business. A good hairdresser may still go out of business. So we looked at the type of small business you're starting up. Then we looked at things like, how many family members are participating in the business. If there are more family members participating, it's less likely that you go bankrupt because you would feel really bad about letting them down. Then we would look at how many years you actually had your business at the same address. Because you can have the same business and move around and people lose you. But if you are at the same address for 3 years and you are still in business, then chances are you have a good business. So we were looking at a lot of these proxy informations, and out of that we built a model, a proxy model, again using data and analytics, and we started using a credit scoring model relying entirely on proxy data to decide which kind of microfinance, micro-business customers to target. And we did that. No other bank did it at the time. And they were looking at us like we were crazy because we were granting loans to people on a seemingly random basis. But we had a model behind it, which was actually data-driven, but it used proxy information. So to go back again, with microfinance, the good news is that you have a lot of information which is out in the open because they cannot hide it as efficiently as a big corporate customer. The bad news is that a lot of information is missing, but that's not a big problem as long as you have a smart approach, because you can use proxy information and build a proxy information model on whom to target. And if the person who asked this question wants to know anything more about it, again, my suggestion is send me an email, because I can spend 5 hours talking about how to build proxy models, but I don't want to take up all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. We have another question. The region that they are operating is not supportive of the digital financial services. I'm not sure of the region, but I asked the person that asked the question. 50% of the customers that they cater are not even aware of the digital service channels. What do you think we should start in terms of using big data and digital services with our customer?
Wow. First of all, I would say let's try to separate out two things here. One is using digital channels. The other one is...
sorry, Sandy, just wanted to add, they are located in Pakistan.
Okay, thank you. So, all right. So the thing is, the environment may not be conducive to using digital channels, but using a big data type of approach and digital transformation driven business model in the business does not entirely rely upon people using digital channels. It helps you if people are using digital channels. But if you think back to what I was saying right in the beginning when we talked about those 10 steps of taking advantage of what we have. One of those 10 steps was doing a data mapping exercise. So if you don't have digital channels, because people do not accept digital channels, that is not a barrier to your using data in an intelligent way. Because what you can do is you can look at how you gather information about your customers. Let's assume that people they don't feel comfortable using the internet, or they do not have access to the internet. They want to talk to people face to face. So you have sales agents who go out to the villages and they talk to people face to face. So I would look at how do these people who talk to people face to face capture information coming from these prospects? Do they have the tools to capture information? What tools they need to have? It's not that they need to have online access, because many times you go out to the rural areas and, let's not talk about Pakistan. Let's talk about a very advanced economy, Australia, okay? So don't think that Pakistan is not advanced, because Australia is also not advanced. Australia has huge, big areas called the outbacks where you do not have digital coverage, okay? So when people go out there and talk to potential customers, they use pen and paper to get the information. And then they go home and then they input that information into the system somehow. So what we need to do is we need to define a process, how they capture the information, what information they capture, how they put into the system, and how we pull in and use that information into the system and then feed back to them useful suggestions on what to do. So the first step is, let's take a look at the kind of information that we gather. A big issue I see is that salespeople, they go out there and they gather the information that they need to open the account or grant the loan. But they don't gather any other information that could help me to understand the customer well. So I need to think through the piece of information that these guys need to gather and make sure that I have a good list. Not too long, but something that gives me the data that I need. Then the next step is, okay, they gather it on paper. How can I make it easy for them to put it into the system? Then the next step is, how do I catch this information when it comes into head office and convert it into something that can be useful with as little intervention from other people as possible? Because every time there's a human intervention, there is a possibility for changing the data and basically adulterating the information. So you don't have such clean information. Okay, now that I plan that and I have the information, I need to have a model how I can use this information for the next sales step. And then I need to build a process. Once I define this next sales step, how do I send it back to the salesperson who talked to this person and have the suggestion on what to do next and give the person the support to do the right step and do it very efficiently. So this is a process mapping. It's a data capture, data manipulation, follow-up process mapping. And whether or not people are using digital channels to contact me, it doesn't matter. For every single approach, I can do this mapping and I can design the process. So I don't think that is really an impediment. It's just that we need to think about the data mapping, the process mapping. Okay. So I don't know if I gave the person enough ideas, but my suggestion is, if you have any more questions on this, please send me an email. And instead of spending 5 hours getting into gory details here, I can get back to you with some suggestions, okay?
Thank you very much, Sandy. Thank you for all the questions, and thank you for attending this webinar today. Please feel free to reach to us with any other questions that you might have. You can directly contact us or Sandy in his email. More than welcome to. We will be sharing the slides of the webinar in the upcoming few days. So thank you again. Thank you, Sandy, for being with us in these 2 webinars for these 2 months. And thank you for all your insights. Well, we're gonna have upcoming webinars in the upcoming 2 months, so we hope to have some of you there. For now, thank you and bye. Have a good rest of your days. Thank you, Sandy.
Well, thank you guys. Take care. Don't forget the offer is there. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.